So, hey everyone, welcome to the Stars and Strikes full-time show. The United States men's national team 7, Trinidad and Tobago 0. The biggest win for the U.S. over Trinidad and Tobago in history. An absolutely dominant performance from the boys in the red, white, and blue. Ryan, can't complain with a performance like that.
Not at all. And the first thing I want to say to start out is that, obviously since our, mishap in World Cup qualifying, this has been the second time we've played Trinidad and Tobago. But the thing about this game is that we weren't as stacked as the first time. I mean, this was primarily a homegrown, a local soil team. And we battered them even more so than the first time. I mean, in the first time we had Pulisic, I believe Weston McKennie was playing, Michael Bradley, and this time we battered them even more. And I think that's just a testament. I even said this in our most recently recorded episode, that this is a testament towards where the United States national team is going. That even our our second best team, our reserve guys, our younger guys, they're putting past convincing performance against what seems to be one of our rivals at this point, our CONCACAF rivals.
Absolutely. And if Trinidad and Tobago do get through their preliminary round of World Cup qualifying, they will be the first opponent come September for the U.S. in World Cup qualifying. So that could be a big-time performance and a big-time game to try and get some payback in the last World Cup qualifying match that ended up losing the chance for the U.S. to go to the 2018 World Cup. In a game like this, Trinidad didn't have their A-team either. You have to take everything that happened in this match with a little bit of a grain of salt, of course, but there are so many positives throughout the board. I think the way we played fast, the pressing I loved. That was something that I wasn't sure early about. Gregg Berhalter in his tenure, he seemed to just want to do a lot of slow build-up, and it just didn't really fit the team. And now it seems like we're doing like a much more up-tempo style of play, and we're playing a lot faster, hitting them on the counter, quick possessions, counterattacks, and boom, there we go. And I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, I think exactly going off of what you're saying is we're starting to kind of see a play style develop with this group of players that Gregg is. You could see the impact that Gregg has on these players, and whether you want to put Leggett, maybe Yule, Long as kind of these focal points of players that are kind of helping these other players around them integrate this system. It's really interesting that we're starting to see a consistent style of play, regardless of the players that are on the pitch. I mean, that could very well be why Berhalter has these favorites, is because he wants these figureheads in the team to kind of translate this play style over to whoever's entering, exiting the team, whatever camp it may be. So it's just really positive to see this play style grow and develop, because, I'd even go as far to say that although this was, I wouldn't say as strong as a team as our previous game against El Salvador, I would say that this was a better performance from the boys.
Absolutely. The quality of goals was definitely better. Jonathan Lewis's second goal was an absolute beauty, outside of the box curler after a nice little build-up. The build-up throughout the game and all of these goals were fantastic. Jesus Ferreira, 6 goal involvements. We'll get his analysis when we get to the player ratings. Honestly, let's just get to player ratings right now. So, as always,
let's get right into it.
We're going to start with the goalkeeper, Matt Turner. 8 out of 10. Didn't have much to do, but he had a great penalty save.
It couldn't be much of a better day for Matt Turner. I mean, just making an appearance in the team as a 26-year-old, props to him. And then he trademarked it with keeping that clean sheet. When the penalty came up, he stomped his authority on the game, and props to him. It's I mean, who knows where he'll play come these 20 games this year, if he'll get a shot, but he had his turn today, and he took it brightly.
Moving on to the defensive line, Aaron Herrera, I gave him a 7 out of 10. Didn't have too much to do in defense. I thought he had a couple of good attacks going forward, putting a few good crosses, and a dominant performance. 7-0, 7 out of 10. Oops, I'm actually lagging out a little bit.
Yeah, my let's see, am I back in the live? It just said it kicked me.
Oop. Let's
Thank God
see.
we have the Zoom recording going as well. But
Yep.
All
Sorry,
right.
guys. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties. I am back by myself. Hey, everyone. Hopefully we'll get Ryan back in here.
Let's see. I'm gonna just try rejoining real quick.
Yep. Let's see if it gets back going.
All right.
ASU Wi-Fi and Chapman Wi-Fi. You can't really be happy with school Wi-Fi.
Let's see. Okay. Come on.
Oh, he's back. And technology is working on our side once again. So on to the center backs. I gave Aaron Long and Miles Robinson both 8 out of 10s. Aaron Long assisted Miles Robinson on his goal, diving header off of a corner. 8 out of 10 for both of them.
Yeah, so I'm gonna take it back to Herrera. I gave him actually a 6 out of 10, which is not bad at all. I just think he didn't impress really. He was on the field. He didn't make mistakes, but I think he was probably the least influential player out of our starting 11. So I mean, not a bad performance, but in games like this, you really need to impress, especially when we're having a dominant game. And as for the center backs, I gave Robinson a 7. And then Long a 7.5. Long, I really liked this game from him. It's really solid, especially his balls out of the back. I mean, he's had a good handful or two of just direct balls, whether they're lobbed or on the ground, and it's his passing range is really strong, and I like to see that. And also the goal involvement from each of them, which would be they're both of their major contribution to the game because they didn't have much defending to do otherwise. So,
left back Sam Vines, I'm going 8 out of 10. I thought he was really good in possession, really good going forward. Didn't again have too much to do in defense like the rest of the defenders in this team and the rest of the players in this team for that matter. But I really liked the way he was involved in the buildup in a few of the goals. The first goal that he scored, the nice little entry ball curled in front to set up Ferreira for that assist over to Jonathan Lewis was very nice. So I'm going to go for an 8 out of 10. And I think he's definitely a player that's putting his hat into that left back, pot of names, because that's still a position where we don't have a solidified guy. And I think the Colorado Rapids defender is definitely starting to put his name into that hat. Moving on to the midfield, Kellen Acosta, I gave him a 9 out of 10. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. He was one of the best players on the pitch, easily the best player in midfield for either team. He was fantastic in defense, in transition, and in the attack. Played a couple really nice balls, got into the box a few times. 9 out of 10 for Kellen Acosta.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Acosta. I'm going to give him an 8. Just because I think it took him some time to grow into the first half when Leggett and Ewell were kind of the major outlets for our building, as we built out the back. But really, second half was all Kellen Acosta, man. Like he right off the whistle, we had 2 huge goal involvements off of balls. 2 balls from deep, and he just gets play going towards for the first one, it was towards Long to set up that, and then the second one, I believe that was for Lewis's second, right?
Yep.
So and so that's exactly what I during our halftime show, that's exactly what I wanted to see from them, as a deep lying, a tough but also a kind of a playmaker, an influential player going forward, and second half was really positive, 8 out of 10.
Yeah, and Kellen Acosta is a guy that we've talked about a lot on this show, and we weren't sure what type of involvement he would have with the national team. And in these last 2 camps, he's put out big performances. Gregg Berhalter has said he's balled out in training. And just like that, Kellen Acosta is back into the mind of Gregg Berhalter in terms of midfield selection. Is he going to get in over Weston McKennie or Tyler Adams, even a Yunus Musa, a Michael Bradley? I don't think so. Maybe even a Brendan Aronson. Obviously, different types of players, but probably not. But I think Kellen Acosta is definitely now in contention to be in the squad that goes to World Cup qualifying, that goes to the Gold Cup, Nations League. He's too old for the Olympics probably, but he's definitely back in the first team plans. Moving on to Sebastian Leggett.
If he keeps a level head, man, Kellen Acosta is going to be a good backup for us. I mean, a good guy to throw into the midfield. He just has to keep that form running, because we know in the past we've seen inconsistencies with him, but if he could keep this going with him, it's good to see.
Moving on to Sebastian Lletget, I thought he was probably the weakest link. Well, one of the two weakest links, along with Jackson Ewell. Well, I'd say I gave both of them 7 out of 10s. Obviously, in a game like this, you can't really have any bad ratings because there wasn't really a player that played poorly. I just gave him 7 out of 10s because there were a couple times where I thought that both of them were a little bit careless in possession, and against a better quality opponent, we would have been paid for. Or we would have – hold on, that didn't make any sense. But they would have made us pay.
They would have made us pay, yeah. I think, what you just said is exactly the same that I was going for. I think they both had bright starts to the game. I think, out of the blocks, they were lively, but they just kind of dropped off, and it seemed, not up to their usual standards. I'm a fan of Sebastian Lletget, but today it wasn't his best game. I gave him a 7 out of 10. Ewell actually a 6.5 out of 10. Like you said, just not the most influential players on the pitch, but also not too bad. But we did have Roldan come in, who also, didn't influence that much either. I just think it maybe wasn't that kind of game for them, for that position on the field.
Yeah, Christian Roldan, I gave a 6 out of 10. Obviously, we're going to get to most of the subs later in the show, but it's interesting that Gregg Berhalter is still preferring Jackson Ewell over Christian Roldan, because I definitely prefer Christian Roldan in that holding midfield role over Jackson Ewell. I think Jackson Ewell is probably a more talented passer, but at times, even though he has that ability to ping balls all over the pitch, I think Jackson Ewell is careless. And I don't think he has the same athleticism that Christian Roldan has. And obviously this show, we're not the biggest Jackson Ewell fans, but I think we just have a lot better players in our arsenal and in the player pool that can play that role.
Yeah, and the thing with Jackson Ewell as well, which I've been happy to see in the past few camps, is that typically he's been a guy who's been more passive on the ball, whether that's having to do with his position as a holding midfielder, but he's not the most progressive of players when wanting to move the ball forward. And in these past 2 games where we've seen him, he's had decent contributions towards goal. I mean, bringing the ball forward out of defense, having nice, pinging balls over the top, through balls and all that. So it's good to see some development from him. But like you said, I don't think he is our best player for that position. The only reason that I can see him having, use in this team is, like I said earlier, is if he has that role in the team that Gregg wants him to be, kind of this anchor towards players, somebody that he could keep in the squad to set the tempo, set the play style, which I don't know why he would choose Jackson Ewell to do that, or Sebastian Lletget for that matter. But Berhalter does have these core players that he seems to work with. So I guess that's all him.
And to be fair to Jackson Ewell, he's played well in the last 2 games. I think part of that has to do with competition, and where I see Jackson Ewell being a part of this team based on the player that he is and his just quality in general, is he's going to play against the lower likes of the CONCACAF. Maybe in the group stages of the Gold Cup, early in qualifying against a Trinidad and Tobago, against a Guatemala, teams like that. But against a Mexico, a Costa Rica, even a Canada now, I don't see Jackson Ewell being the player that we put in. I'd much prefer to see a Michael Bradley, obviously Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, Yunus Musa, and those boys would be in ahead of him. But even with injuries, I just think that we need a more active and a much more influential player in terms of the work he does off the ball.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, I think if we do results of continuing to give Ewell these opportunities, which I'm happy to have him give him the opportunities where they're deserved, but in games like Canada, Mexico, stuff like that, I think that we can ultimately end up paying the price if we have a player sometimes careless in that position against a team with such high intensity or a high press. So it's something to look out for, because the players like Yunus Musa, Adams, McKennie, they're not going to be able to play every game like we mentioned earlier with Dest. So,
hey, Alex just entered the chat. What's going on, man? Moving on to the forward line. Every single player in this forward line scored 2 goals. Jonathan Lewis, Jesus Ferreira, and Paul Arriola. I gave each of them a 9 out of 10. I think I'll give Ferreira a 9.5 out of 10 and my man of the match. 6 goal involvements in only his second cap for the U.S., a guy that usually does not play striker. 2 goals, 4 assists. I thought he was absolutely fantastic today. The way he linked up, build up play, laying the ball off for the other players in transition, creating opportunities to score. I thought he was fantastic, and that's why I'm going with him as my man of the match.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned 2 goals and 4 assists. What do you have to do for a 10 out of 10 then? I mean, I gave Ferreira 10 out of 10. The other 2 wingers, Lewis and Ariola, both 9 out of 10 because, man, Ferreira just had, as good as a game as you can have. I mean, apart from not having a hat trick, I mean, this guy definitely made his name known. Nothing more to say than just what a game from him. I mean, all 3 of them props. I just love, like we mentioned earlier with Ariola in the halftime show, both him and Lewis, that energy and that composure, both of them is just great to see as we're going to be needing options in all these tournaments to come up. So 9 out of 10 for them both of them, and then a 10 out of 10 for the man of the match, Ferreira.
See, the reason I did not give him a 10 out of 10 is because he missed a few chances that I thought he should have scored. So that's the only reason he doesn't get a 10 out of 10 for me. Still the man of the match. He was absolutely 9-0. Sensational. And now Gregg Berhalter has a really good problem on his hands with all these young strikers that we have, including Ferreira, Jalkini, who got involved in scoring. Sebastian Soto got involved in scoring last week. Not to mention Josh Sargent, Josie Altidore, and all the other talented strikers. Another guy that came onto the pitch was one of the best rookies in MLS this season, Daryl DK. I gave him a 6 out of 10. The rest of the subs, I gave them all 6 out of 10s. Not too much involvement from them. We were just being dominant the whole game. Andres Perea, I gave him a 6.5 out of 10, the only sub other than a 6, because he had a little bit more play time. I like what I saw from him. Aside from the penalty, I thought he was fine. This isn't really where we're going to get to judge a player like that. He's a quality player, and I really want to see him play up against a better opponent and see to really show what he can do for this national team.
Yeah, I think I did the exact same thing as you, is just sprinkle kind of 6 out of 10s all around. I don't think anybody really had a huge impact coming on, and that's kind of how it was in our last game against El Salvador too. I mean, it's just, I guess, probably just how the team is set up. But I do want to mention DK is he finally got some play time, and I still want to see some more of him because today I think he just wasn't on his A game. The Orlando City players are all hot. I mean, they've all brought this team, this domestic
FC Dallas
team
and Orlando City heavy today.
Yeah, they've all brought this domestic team to the next level. So I just want to see more of DK. Today he was a bit sloppy in front of goal. His touches weren't great. He was there, but like you said, not a game to judge him off of.
All right, we're going to move on from this game. But before we do that, do you have any last words regarding this game before we get into some other storylines regarding U.S. soccer?
I'd just like to reiterate that, we still haven't learned anything from these past 2 games. There's still a lot of work to be done, a lot of things to seek out what this team is going to be in the future. I mean, I think the main thing that United States men's national team fans were looking forward to for this game was to see Josie Altidore, and we didn't see Josie Altidore. So we can't get too hot-headed after this because we still got a lot to learn with these players. It's good to see that we have the consistency, and like I mentioned earlier, is that we have a play style start to form. But other than that, we still got a lot to learn.
You mentioned that play style. We saw a similar play style from the European boys, and I just cannot wait to see both those camps mesh. So when you finally see the MLS guys start to mend with the Christian Pulisic's, Weston McKennie's, and the other European-based players that we have, because I think we got a lot of – I just can't wait to see them. We have so many talented players, and this team can be absolute dynamite if we can get if Greg can get the boys playing together. Going over to players that are on their way to Europe, Jordan Morris, the forward from Seattle Sounders, has joined Swansea City for the remainder of the season on loan. A little bit of a surprising move, going over to the English Championship. I think that's a league that suits him. Jordan Morris is a very strong and very physical forward. He's got a lot of speed. I think that I would have preferred to have seen him in the Bundesliga, but I think he'll do well over in England.
Yeah, and I think that it's about time that Jordan Morris kind of gets his hands dirty and gets out of the comforts of Seattle Sounders, and because he's a player that his ceiling is immense. We know the type of capabilities that he has, but we've only seen them in the MLS, and it's so this season, even though it's the championship, I mean, with Swansea City, it's still a historic English club, so it's a big step for him. And I mean, personally, I don't want to see him, kind of just use this as a developmental thing and then come back to the Sounders. I think he needs to, start pursuing, life in Europe. He's still a young guy, and he's got a lot to develop.
Back in a few years ago, Jermaine Jones absolutely ripped Jordan Morris for not taking the opportunity to go over to Europe. He absolutely tore into him after that failure to qualify for 2018. Maybe this is him kind of clapping back and saying, I can do it. And you know what? I think he could definitely play at a higher level than the English Championship, but I think this is a time for him to show that he can do it and prove that he can do it. I think he's going to become a better player. It's a very different league. He's not going to be on the ball a lot. But soccer isn't necessarily great over in the English Championship. It's physical. It's dirty. He's going to have to get his hands wet and his hands dirty. And I think that's just the type of player Jordan Morris is. And I definitely think he's a player that we could see star in that league. A player that's also being linked to the same club, Paul Arriola. What would you think of Paul Arriola going over to England to link up, to Wales actually, playing in the English league, to link up with Jordan Morris over at Swansea?
I think that would be awesome. I mean, having two Americans up and down each flank for Swansea City would be really cool. And just to see Paul Arriola, I think he as an older player, I mean, he's probably in the prime of his career right now. I think
25.
Yeah, he can definitely take that opportunity now to go ahead and do it, because why not? I mean, there's no point, such a talented player to restrict yourself to only the MLS, and he's time and time again we're talking about Paul Arriola. There's this guy who's so talented. He's so energetic. He's so calm and composed on the ball and lively at the same time. But he's just an MLS player, and he doesn't need to be just that. Like you said, he's still fairly young, but also in the prime of his career. He has the capabilities of making a bigger name for him than just a guy from MLS.
I think he's another player that, granted, is more talented than the English Championship. And we're not trying to disrespect the English Championship or say MLS is all this, but we've seen Paul Arriola play well against some very good international opponents and some good MLS teams. Granted, he is coming off a very big long-term injury. He's played well since he's come back from that injury for the U.S. However, maybe he's not quite up to speed of the Premier League. Then again, I don't know if he would be anyway, but I think that'd be a good opportunity for him to improve. I think both these players would probably come back to MLS. That's probably what everyone's been saying is going to happen if they do make these loan moves after the English Championship season is done. And if Swansea City do win promotion due to the help of both these guys, if obviously Paul Arriola does join Jordan Morris there, I'd like to see both of them maybe stay and try and duke it out over in the Premier League. Moving on to another guy making a move to Europe, right back for FC Dallas, Brian Reynolds, joining AS Roma over in Serie A.
Yeah, I think as a defender, I think Italy's probably the best place to go. I think it's a perfect move for him, at least, because I know a ton of clubs are battling it out for Reynolds. I mean, we're seeing names from everywhere. I remember seeing Juventus maybe get into the picture, and it's a good opportunity for a defender. It's great to see that not only are our attacking talents all starting to get chances overseas, but we have good defensive players that are starting to get developed as well. And in Italy, I think that's going to serve him right. We also have Mark McKenzie over at Genk now, and I mean we have players of all different assets over in Europe, and it's good that we don't have to, hand pick. We have Clint Dempsey over here in England. He's our European player. We got plenty of guys over in Europe now in all positions. So and not to mention Italy's one of their best clubs too. So a great move for him.
Yeah, and the difference I think between both these players, when you think about it, is Jordan Morris is definitely going to be playing week in and week out for Swansea. He wouldn't have made that move, that loan move, if he wasn't going to be a regular fixture for them. Paul Areola won't make that move unless he's assured that he is going to get regular playtime for Swansea. Mark McKenzie went over to Genk in Belgium probably because he's going to get consistent playtime. The guy who Reynolds replaced, Reggie Cannon, went over to Portugal because he's going to get regular playtime. It will take Brian Reynolds some time to break into that Roma team. There is no denying that. He's a very talented player, 1 goal and 8 assists this season in MLS for Reynolds. But I definitely think he's a player that has a shot to break into that Roma team in the future. Maybe he gets a few appearances here, a start in the cup here, a start in the cup there, and then next season in 2021 is really when we're going to see 2021, 2022 is when we're going to see Reynolds hopefully establish himself over in Italy.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure on the details of the deal. I don't know if you know, but I don't know how many years he's signed there or what. But yeah, he's definitely, I think, like I mentioned earlier, just being in Italy, I think it's going to be a good place for him to develop defensively, because it's, a league that's heavy on defense. Italy and Spain, oftentimes they have teams that'll sit back and rely on defense more against the traditional top clubs. Obviously, Roma is a top club, but they still need a strong defense as well to play into the atmosphere of the league. So it'll be good for him to develop there.
Just before we wrap up today's show, Weston McKennie scored another goal, and we're going to finish out talking about Matthew Hoppe, representing SoCal soccer. Both of us obviously grew up in SoCal, played soccer all around California. He's been on fire over in the Bundesliga for Schalke. They just brought back Klaas-Jan Huntelaar to the club to pair with him up top for that struggling team. But Matthew Hoppe's kind of injected a bit of life into a team that seemed to be floundering down in the Bundesliga.
Yeah, how cool is that? Huntelaar and Hoppe together. I mean, we've seen such high praise from Huntelaar. One of the game's, renowned strikers from over the years, and it's kind of cool to kind of see that little partnership. Maybe to have a little mentor now. Obviously, Hoppe's getting on the score sheet a decent amount, but he's still young, and he could use a little mentor, a talented striker to help him out, and he didn't have that before at Schalke, and that's why he broke into the team, because their lack of goal scoring ability. But now they have 2 prolific goal scorers. I mean, I say Hoppe's prolific, but this season he's
been a prolific goal scorer. Yeah, 5 goals in 9 Bundesliga appearances for Schalke this season, and the 19-year-old, he's looking like he's a finisher. He's showing that he can finish in multiple different ways. Right foot, left foot, outside the box, inside the box, cool, calm, and collected. He's definitely a guy I think Greg has to consider for these national teams coming up, and especially for that Olympic team and that Olympic qualifying tournament that's going to happen down in Mexico later this year. And another American player balling out over in Europe.
Yeah, and it looks like all these players too have made really good decisions with the moves that they took up. Maybe I'm saying that prematurely, but it looks like these players are in safe hands, and they're going to be at the right place for them personally to develop. So only good to come, baby.
Only good to come. We got guys balling out over in Europe. The domestic boys balling out today. A 7-0 victory for the U.S. men's national team over Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you all for joining us in the IG Live show. Thank you, everyone who's watching on YouTube later. It's great having you all. For Chaz Messman and Ryan Deeb, see you guys next time.
See you guys.